Hi everyone, this is Alan Rosinski of Metro Manhattan Office Space. Good afternoon. If I had told you in 2019 that within 1 year office buildings would be 80 or 90% empty, that many retail stores would be closed, that restaurants, with the exception of outdoor dining in New York City, would be closed, you would think I had gone bananas. But that's life. Life has a way of throwing you curveballs, whether it's to an individual, a country, or in this case, the entire world. So I'm going to have a little bit of fun now, and I'm going to speculate what the commercial real estate market is going to look like in New York City, say in the year 2022. Now, I've lived in Manhattan since the early 1980s. I've been in the commercial real estate business for more than 15 years, and I've been through a few economic cycles. So I think I have the right to speculate and the experience to speculate intelligently. At least I hope so. So let's start off with retail space. Retail had been weakening for years with the advent of online shopping, Amazon, and a lot of these small retailers, they were zombies. They were going to go anyway. And this has just accelerated the process. But as always, markets correct themselves. Rents are going to drop very, very significantly, and there'll be different uses that lease retail store level. They will not be traditional stores, in my opinion. There will be, but to a much lesser expense. You'll get new types of tenants. You may get a fair number of medical tenants, distribution centers. You'll even get some office in these retail spaces. There's just not enough demand at this point from traditional stores. That sort of business is gradually, and maybe not so gradually, on its way out. But retail sector is going to take years to recover. I'm afraid, unfortunately, that many restaurants are going to go out of business. But these installations are in place, and there'll be restaurateurs from out of New York City who've always wanted a presence in Manhattan who will lease these restaurants, and they won't have the expense of building them, or at least they'll have to renovate them, but building the kitchen, installing stacks, that's a major, major expense. And retail, unfortunately, is going to take years to recover, and it'll be very different when it does recover. And in fact, I don't even think it'll be retail at that point. So let's look at the situation with office buildings. Now, what I think is sort of an interesting analogy is what happened in lower Manhattan, particularly the financial district, after the dot-com crash in the early 2000s. The economy weakened, a lot of these tenants were out, and there was a glut of vacant office space throughout the city, and to a large extent in lower Manhattan too. And you know what happened? Developers bought these buildings. The buildings are smaller floor plates, which were very amenable to conversion to residential condominiums. They vacated the remaining tenants, and they sold these buildings as condos very successfully. Lower Manhattan in the financial district is the fastest growing residential neighborhood in New York City. Now, I could see something like this happening in other neighborhoods of Manhattan, in, say, Midtown Manhattan, if people don't want to go back to their offices, and the vacancy rate really skyrockets, which it appears to be doing. A better use for these buildings may be residential conversions, and we could start to see that happen in another 6 months, a year. The whole process could take a couple of years, but you'll see the trend soon enough. And what happened in lower Manhattan in the early 2000s is supply was taken off the market, the economy improved, market stabilized, and rent started to increase again. And I think you'll see a similar cycle in Midtown Manhattan if this occurs, which I think is entirely possible. Now, one last sector I'd like to discuss, it's the hotel industry. Now, what's happened is really bizarre. There's no tourists, or very few tourists now in Manhattan, and many hotels have been converted to homeless shelters, which isn't really very good for the neighborhoods they're in. But I think that'll change within a year or so, and maybe if tourism doesn't recover, hotels would be converted to senior facilities. There's a growing population of the elderly. Many of them are the younger ones in pretty good shape, and they'd love to be in a major city with all the activities and cultural events and opportunities that that offers. So that's a possibility for hotels if tourism doesn't recover. But I think, in my opinion, things will be going back to normal, and there'll be a thriving tourist industry once again in New York City within the next couple of years. Hope you found this interesting, and I'd be curious to hear your opinion, my subscribers, regarding what the future of the commercial real estate in Manhattan or New York City has to offer. What's in store for us all here? If you have any questions, please tweet them to me. My Twitter handle is @MetroManhattan, and of course, feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Have a nice afternoon, and until the next time, take care now.